Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to hopefully make some money and keep some money after you've made it. Loaded up for discussion today, we have Bitcoin is down 5% to 116K. Market's corrected a little bit. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking also about Joe Lubin's Sharplink Gaming. Talked a little bit about them yesterday, but they bought another 24,000 ETH, around $73 million, becoming the top ETH holder. We'll be reflecting on the ETH value prop compared with everything else. And of course, Pump Token went live yesterday, trading around $5.8 billion when I last checked. Been pretty volatile. We'll be thinking about the price action, as well as some of the knock-on consequences for the meme coin launchpad market and the general trading environment, given how much Hyperliquid has captured that market. So we'll be getting into all of that in a bit. Delighted to say I've got Legendary and Rahim in the co-host seat with me. We'll get into it in just a moment. But before we do, just a reminder, friends, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is incredibly risky. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Tuesday. It is the 15th of July. How are you doing?
GM, this was a bit stressful pre-show today.
Yeah, what were you doing? Shuffling around, not playing any music?
Exactly. What happened? I couldn't hear you. No, you couldn't hear me. I could hear you. Then Rahim joined. I could hear Rahim. He could hear me. Then you disappeared. Then you came back and you could only hear him, but couldn't hear me. I could hear everyone. Then we fixed all of that basically, and we're ready to start the show. And then the music wasn't playing for some weird reason, and I basically did unplug and replug my phone 4 or 5 times until it suddenly worked. Very weird behavior by our roadcasters today.
Sometimes people will ask, they'll DM and they'll ask, just a quick question. How do you do how do you do this all at the same time? It's like, this is not a quick question, guys. It's not a quick question. This is magic that we perform every single day, being live on Twitter video, YouTube video, audio into the spaces. It's pure magic. And no, it is not a quick question. It requires, like I said, 15 pieces of kit and a bunch of research. So that's that. Rahim, how are things going your side? What's going on in Dubai?
GM. It's so funny when Ledge was explaining like the whole thing. It reminded me of that meme from Horrible Bosses, like the whiteboard meme that we see on Twitter all the time, where there's a whiteboard and you're trying to explain that. So I couldn't get that out of my way. But it's been good. Dubai is good. I don't believe I spoke about this because I missed last week's show, but I was at a Hyperliquid meetup about like a week ago, which was super interesting to see. Even the people who organized it were surprised of how many people actually showed up. There were about 250 people, which is crazy on so many levels. Not only, okay, like Hyperliquid is still like a niche product, but you have to take into account that Dubai is usually very dead during the summer. So I was surprised that there are so many crypto people like out and about ready to show up. So there was like a lot of like showcase, like product showcase by a bunch of people. Super nice to see that. And I just got invited to a Monad breakfast this weekend. So it's nice to see things people are building, people are active, even during the summer in the region. So it's been good and awesome.
That sounds fun. Like you're correct in that it's kind of additional regional alpha, which is that many people turning up in a specific place in the Dubai summer is like even more meaningful when you know the context of the Dubai summer, where you know it's exceptionally hot and people tend to try and get away for a little bit. Quick question on that, because that sounds exciting. What was the key takeaway, if any? I know sometimes you can glean a lot of like information that you can't really get just from being on the timeline from the Hyperliquid event.
There were a lot of builders that I met who were actually from South Asia, which I did not expect. Like the amount of people who are building on Hyper EVM from the DeFi side was like way higher than I expected. I thought like the meetup would be mostly of like degens and creator and like, you know, people who are like trading on Hyperliquid or whatever. But like seeing actually people building like yield platforms and just like cross chain, you know, like EVM, like swapping, something a lot of people have been doing. Like I was pretty intrigued to see. I also met a bunch of VCs who I did not expect to show up. Like they don't usually show up to like these random meetups, but they were like, we are here to kind of scout what the hell's happening in the hyper EVM space. So I think that was like super interesting for VCs to come into like the trench meetups, because this was like a very casual meetup at someone's like office just for the vibes. For them to show up, I was like, okay, you don't see that often, at least in Dubai.
Very, very interesting. I've got some thoughts on the Hyperliquid value prop. We'll be talking about Pump later, but I think it's very connected to Hyperliquid at the moment because of how much it's captured its attention. So I'll share those a little bit later. But yeah, that's very, very interesting to me. I've been thinking a lot more on Hyperliquid. As people know, we talk about it a lot on the show. We've been in it for quite a long time. But when you're talking about people building on top of it, Rahim, the thing that I think a lot of people have processed, but maybe the market's not like fully processed, is the Phantom integration of Hyperliquid, where they just allow builders to build on top of it and access the liquidity. And suddenly now Phantom is doing like real money by accessing the Hyperliquid liquidity on the perp side. And just thinking what the potential of that could be when everyone is able to plug into it over time, I think is there's some blue sky thinking that you can do there when you think of how many people will just be able to plug in and play, I think. So very, very interested there. Maybe we'll dive into that a bit more kind of as we talk about Pump, because they're kind of capturing the spot market as well, which is, yeah, we'll get into all that good stuff. Before we get there, guys, anything else before we hit the main headlines? Ledge, just checking in with you.
Nothing to add to that.
Okay, let's do it then. Let's get into it, starting with the majors as usual, starting with the price action, which is a little bit disappointing compared to the days before, but you can't go up every single day. Bitcoin is down 4%. Oh, hang on a second. This is not updated. I'm just going to refresh. Bitcoin is, okay, that is correct. Bitcoin is down 4%, but it's at 116,000. ETH is down 3% to 2.9K. XRP is down a few percent as well to $2.90. BNB is down a few percent to 6.79. Solana is down 4% to 160. Everything kind of tracking each other there. Although the one thing I'd say is on the 7-day performance, Bitcoin is up 7%, ETH is up 16, XRP is up 27. I just don't think you can ignore XRP, to be honest. Maybe that will be the top, Ledge. When I buy XRP, because I just think you can't ignore it anymore. Maybe that will be the top. I don't know, but
I was on a call with a friend yesterday who was like, whilst we were speaking, he got a notification where XRP crossed $3, and he's like, I bought it at $3 in 2017. I'm finally up on my investment.
Gosh, yeah, that can happen, right? I wonder, is that person going to sell now that it's back, or is just gonna you kind of write it off?
I did ask him. He's like, now like the institutional buy seems bullish, so he's like, he's gonna hold.
He's bullish again after 3 years.
8 years.
Cardano is also down 3%. Hyperliquid is also down 3%. Sui is flat at around $4. Hype's at 47. Cardano is at 73 cents. Cardano on the week's up 25%. Hyperliquid is up 23% on the week. I think I knew that, but I don't know why that's surprising me now. Sui's up 37% on the week, though. Go on.
Did you know that Stellar is up 84% on the week?
What on earth is Stellar?
Look,
How is that? Is the 14th largest coin in the cryptocurrency market, and I have to be honest. Wow. Okay, so we're looking at a nice chart here.
Up 350% on the year.
What is Stellar's got something? Is it something to do with stable coins? You can say we don't. You don't know. We don't know.
I don't know exactly what Stellar is.
XLM. What's the ticker?
It's a decentralized public blockchain that gives developers the tools to create experiences that are more like cash than crypto. It's a payment network, kind of.
Basically, every single crypto asset ever.
I feel so dumb. Like, this is the top 12. This is the 12th largest cryptocurrency, and I can't tell you what it does.
Well, maybe someone in the comments will be able to tell us if everyone else is as smart as we say they are. Marco Polo saying 2017 Dino coins coming back alive. It's XRP's cousin. That's not an. Oh, Michael's also said the same thing. What does that mean? Is that like a? I don't know. That's just Michael who said XRP's cousin. That doesn't show that you know what XLM actually is. I know it's both start with an X, but we're looking for like an actual use case or product or market that they are attacking.
It's a fork of XRP.
Okay. Maybe that's what it is. Okay. Frogathon. Frogathan. Thank you very much. So it is XRP's cousin in some way. Same co-founder. Interesting. Thank you. Well, that's pretty impressive. XRP, third biggest, then going co-founding the 12th biggest. All right, maybe that'll be the top when I buy some XLM and XRP and lever them both up. Anyway, so things are very much up on the week, but kind of cooling off a little bit here. Everything's just cooling off. Onto the meme coin side of things. When this just loads up, this is being a bit slow for me. Here we go. We've got Doge, which is down 7%. Pepe's down 3%. Bonk is actually up 6%. Going against the trend. Just going to refresh because I want to make sure that this is accurate. Pengu up 12% when everything else is pretty much red. Rahim, I know you got a nice Pengu position. How's that feeling for you? What are you doing on Pengu?
Dude, I'm like so comfortable on it. It's like at this point I feel like if there's a coin that can reach like SHIB levels, it has to be this. If it happens, it's this. Otherwise, like it just doesn't happen. Just like the traction that you're seeing. Yeah, one of my favorite things, which I feel like is going pretty under the radar. I don't know if you realized, but they essentially updated all their GIFs with Pengu written on top of it and like a watermark. So now no matter where you're putting like those GIFs, you're kind of seeing like the word Pengu. And I'm like, this is kind of interesting. This is like soft shilling the token across like your Web2 markets and stuff. So I think like it's super interesting. Did you see there was that coin that like went up to 150, 160 million called Alt, like the ticker was Alt.
Yeah, I saw
Did you
that.
see
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And that kind of went up to like 160 mil, and yesterday dumped to 4 million last night.
Wow. Gosh. So maybe trenches are back in some capacity here. But Pengu and Bonk clearly outperforming. The other thing outperforming as well within the Bonk ecosystem is Useless. Useless is back up 13% to 34 cents. I have noticed this. I talked about this last week on the show on the meme coin side, where when Bonk and Useless move, the rest of the market is chilled, and then the rest of the market moves, and then those two chill. Like I've noticed this like opposite behavior for those two in particular. Fartcoin is down 10%, SPX is down 12%, Trump is down 6%, WIF is down 6%. So very much red across the board. Otherwise, MOG is down 15% as well. So yeah, mostly red. Rect is down 6% as well. But Pengu, Pengu, Useless, and Bonk being the outperformers. Getting into the headlines themselves, we've got Bitcoin down 5% to 116K. Legendary will be breaking down a little bit of a market thought process there, maybe a bit on Bitcoin dominance and how we're looking at that. Joe Lubin's Sharplink Gaming buys another 24,000 ETH for around $73 million to become the top ETH holder. We'll be reflecting on these kind of the continued importance of treasury companies and ETH treasury companies, but also just the general sense of these treasury companies. And then finally, of course, Pump token went live yesterday and is trading around 5.8 billion last time I checked. We'll do a little bit of a wrap up there, thinking about how we think it went, what are the implications, what are the consequences, because it's far bigger than just the Pump token actually in this respect, I think. So we will talk about that today. Ledge, anything we need to know on the NFT side before we get to the rest of the roundup?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at that, because we said yesterday that it was a pretty green day for NFTs. So just seeing how they reacted to that correction, unsurprisingly, they are down. Pudgy's down 7%. Bored Apes pretty flat. They are the exception here, down only 0.8%. Azuki's down 4%. Milady's down 6%. Doodle's down 4%. But over the week, all of those collections are still up quite significantly. So they have been enjoying some more action for sure. It's interesting to me that, and you pointed it out yesterday, that on the Pudgy side, that the floor is holding up pretty well after 50% run over the last 7 days, because you said yesterday that a lot of these Pudgies have been bought on blend via leverage. But we also looked into the lending data, and you said it yourself, if the floor goes down 1 ETH, we won't see a liquidation cascade. And the floor did go down 1 ETH, and we didn't see a liquidation cascade. So that's good.
Certainly not yet. Should I check in today to see how bad it looks? I don't know. Sometimes I think it can spook the market a little bit when you start looking at this. Sometimes rightly, sometimes wrongly. I don't want to unnecessarily spook the market, but like I'll just share very, very quickly my screen here. It actually doesn't look too bad. Let me do this. Here we go. So we're looking at the blend lending market again. What you can see is this gray line here that is represents the floor price at 13.78 ETH. You have a bunch of loans given out from as high as 12 something ETH or 11 ETH region down to just a few ETH getting lent out. And the more that someone borrows, the higher the interest rate. And if this floor price keeps moving towards the left on the x-axis, you start to have loans that are underwater, i.e. the amount that they've borrowed becomes worth more than the amount that the asset is worth. And so lenders start pulling their loans because they're trying to get their money back. And that causes a cascade. But look, I don't have a particular viewpoint here. Sometimes I'll look at this and say, guys, we're going to go so much lower because of the situation. I do not have a view in this respect. Seems fine at the moment, to be honest. But if you want to be safe,
crazy the amount of loans that people provide on Blur still. Like there's no future incentive, anything, and you still have people providing liquidity on that ecosystem unless I'm missing something.
Blend's a really good product. Like Blend is a really, really good product. If you are a lender, and look, you can provide a loan at Pudgy. Well, let's see. I'm not logged in, but there are loans here where you could have lent 6 ETH for a Pudgy Penguin, which is now worth 13. So around 50%, less than that, like 40% loan to value. You can get 20% on that loan. And that you feel very, very protected there because you're not even tied up. You can pull it whenever you want. That's the real interesting thing about Blend. It's perpetual loans, right? It's not like I'm going to give you this money for 1 month and you need to pay me back on that day. If you don't, you get liquidated. This is more like, no, the borrower can pay you back whenever they want, or you can decide to pull the loan whenever you want and let the market pick up your loan and get paid back by the market. Or and if the market doesn't pay you back, then you get the ass. Then it doesn't work. So I think, I think it can still be attractive sometimes.
It's like high intense leverage trading because if you are borrowing against these loans, you probably are better off going on other platforms because they're way more. The thing is, like over here, exactly what you said, the person can pull off liquidity and you might not even know and get liquidated in a day, whereas it doesn't happen on other platforms. Like I used to use Cyan all the time. I leverage traded Pudgies in December using that. But if you're on the other end, if you're providing loans, it makes super sense for you to go to Blur because it's a high leverage bet. You're getting good APRs, and if people get liquidated, boom. Pretty insane. I think it's pretty commendable that there's so much liquidity.
I think it's a very novel product. So I do like it for that reason. Although I don't think I've ever borrowed here because the rates can go crazy. So you gotta pick what you're going to use it for and pick the strategy. I guess you might borrow if you're purely using leverage to sell pretty quickly. So that would be an alternative. Interesting discussion. Always like going in that direction for the market. Getting into the rest of the roundup to get you up to speed. A lot of treasury stock activity happening. It was there was an article in Bloomberg, or a news piece in Bloomberg, about Vanguard, who own, I didn't know this, 20 million strategy stock, which is 8% of all of MicroStrategy, whilst maintaining their stance that crypto is an immature asset class and not appropriate for long-term investors. Sometimes I really think with these traditional institutions, or maybe just in general, you have to follow the money. Like follow the money and not what people say. I think that is outrageous for some established investment arm, investment team, people who are respected for an investment platform to be not offering crypto to your clients and your customers, but also simultaneously thinking that it'd be a good idea to accumulate 8% of strategy. Like, I think that is pretty wild. And it's just a good reminder to, I don't know, just do your own thinking all the time in this space. In this space and other spaces. Tom Lee's Bitmine announced holdings of $500 million of ETH after closing initial private placement of 250 mil. So that's on the ETH side. Strategy announced another Bitcoin purchase of almost 4.5K of Bitcoin at 111,000. This was an interesting one. Bank of America launches a new weekly publication called On Chain. The first article was called "During a Gold Rush Sell." I don't know why I can't read. During a gold rush, sell shovels. And the article is basically being pretty bullish on ETH, which is pretty interesting. And then in some other news, former Pac-Moon team goes live with Project X. The token is trading on Hyperliquid. So for token trading on Hyperliquid, there is no token now. WIF strategy to purchase Dog meme coin. The first acquisition is for 500,000 WIF tokens. I think that's a bit of a exclamation mark. The fact that, okay, fine, we've got all these strategies. Now we're doing meme coin strategies. Okay. That's something to note. But that's the roundup for me, guys. I've got one one direction to go in for some conversation in a moment. Before we get there and to all the main headlines, what's catching your attention here, Rahim?
I'm gonna say something that's gonna like you're gonna be mad. I think it's ETH, man. Like I am so sure. Like think about like all the Bitcoin.
I'm not even mad
narrative
at that anymore. I'm not mad at that.
I'm happy to hear that, because you would just be like, you would get so frustrated. Another bull case for like ETH. But like if you think about like this institutional Bitcoin conversation, this started like even after ETFs last January. So it's not like they were very far off, and we didn't see that crazy price action, at least that we've been seeing in the last like 2 months. And you kind of like saw like slowly MicroStrategy was still buying stuff, but like we dipped, we were hovering around like 50, 60, 70K. And now you look at like the amount of institutional Bitcoin that's coming, it's crazy. If you look at the last 3 months of price action, and I saw this last night, and I knew the discrepancy, I just didn't realize it was this high. ETH is up 82% in the last 3 months. Solana is up 22% in the last 3 months. Of course, they had that massive run up in Jan during the Trump token thing, but it's crazy to think you have a 3.5 to 4x run in the last 3 months for ETH compared to Sol. And yeah, like yesterday I was listening to like Mando, and Mando was like, yeah, he's placed a massive bet on ETH as well, and he's been like talking about like being bullish on ETH for a while now. So I'm like so convinced now. I'm like so comfy with my leveraged ETH bets with Pepe and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it there's definitely the narrative that's forming, right? For sure. Maybe it's worth just going into the ETH stuff now, because since you mentioned it, but like one of the headlines today is Sharplink Gaming adding another $73 million worth of ETH. And this is obviously the news that, let's see, what's the key piece of information here? Basically, Sharplink is the team run by Consensus, Joseph Lubin. He's the CEO and Ethereum co-founder, became chairman of Sharplink. They've basically accumulated 294,000 ETH to date and has staked 74,000 of it. And so there's a couple of things going on here where they have now overtaken the Ethereum Foundation as the top ETH holders. You also have Tom Lee's Bitminer company, which is kind of aggressively pushing ETH and buying ETH. We've noted his commentary on kind of various American television the last week or two. And then there was another one yesterday, this news, Bit Digital plans to raise 67.3 million in direct share offerings to buy more ETH. The Nasdaq listed firm on Monday announced proposing to offering of 22 million shares, expected to generate 67 mil. So they're going to be doing something similar. And it does sound like the corporate narrative is one which people want to push increasingly you've also seen some commentary from the likes of, who was it yesterday? Oh no, wasn't it just today? I'm getting confused with all the days. This article from this little on-chain review this on-chain article from Bank of America talking about, during a gold rush, you got to sell the shovels, ETH being seen as like critical infrastructure for the stablecoin industry and just the on-chain industry. So I think there are a lot of nice tailwinds here for Ethereum. I guess the question that I would have for you guys is it, how do we place it? Like on some level, if everything just goes up, then that's fine. But are you, Rahim, given that you seem to have the most conviction in this so far and legendary, we're curious for your thoughts in a sec. Are you saying that this is going to outperform all else for the next 6 to 12 months? Is that the direction you're thinking? Or are you thinking to outperform, you go down the risk curve on the ETH assets to things like Pepe and other things?
Well, I definitely think it outperforms a lot of like the bigger coins. Sure. I mean, I feel like Hyperliquid is in a different class, so definitely super bullish on Hyperliquid, and I wouldn't put it in the same category. But like if you look at like price act, we were talking about like XLM, like who the hell is buying XLM or who's buying like XRP? You don't see all of this conversation on the timeline, which is kind of like a good indication. Okay, you have massive institutional support coming for like a lot of these coins. Yes, you can make the argument that there are like a lot of tourists from previous cycles. They find it easy to buy it on Robinhood, and it's perhaps they bring a certain level of volume. But it's exactly to your point, what you were saying earlier is like to just like follow the money. It's like it's become seemingly like more obvious. Yesterday, even like that Kathy Woods post that she tweeted, she was like, I don't understand what all of this means, but like she was just like talking. I just feel like at this point, I think a lot of this cycle, everyone was just focused on so much like consumer focused crypto, and like I don't know, like this guy coming up with like new definition song coins. He came up yesterday, Jesse from Base. But I just feel like the narrative is institutional crypto. You have stable coins, and you want assets that are way more decentralized, that are way more, they have like a history, and that's why these institutions are going for XRP. They went for like Bitcoin, and like ETH seems like the logical thing. Before we jump to Ledge, I would love for us to have some sort of a prediction for ETH for end of this year. It would be nice to have this clip there. Either we are wrong, either we are right. So B, what would your prediction for end of this year for ETH be? You can give me a bear case and you can give me a bull case, and then Ledge you.
I think we're over. I mean, what are we now? We're at 3K, and I'm bullish through the rest of the year. So we're definitely over 4K, in my opinion. Yeah, we're over 4K.
This is your bull case or bear case?
Like 4K to 150K to 3 trillion.
I work in like 3 months. I rarely look as far as 6, or 6 to 12. Apart
And
from
do
maybe
3 months and do 3 months again, and you're at the end of the year.
So you just add it up. You just double it. So 4, and then it becomes 8.
Accept.
No, I think we're over 4, maybe even as soon as 3 to 4 months. Is my current thinking, if the market moves in the way that we think it's going, obviously. And then I don't know. Then you got to see. So that's as much as I can give you at the moment. But curious for your thoughts.
Let's go.
I mean, I don't like price predictions, but let's play this game. So I think we might go a bit sideways before we recover. We'll definitely have in this prediction game a end of the year run. I don't know if we're going to close above 4K. I'll say 3.8K. That's still 30% to go.
Interesting. I guess like, okay, so my numbers would be, I would say on the conservative side, I'm going for 8. And on the bull case side, I'm going 6 to 6,500 end of year. I guess we'll find out. Crazy, dude. Like, look at the amount of institution. Our brother Tommy Lee is buying ETH, like he's buying candy, and your bet is 4K. Are you serious, guys?
Yeah, I think we take it step by step. I mean, a lot of these announcements, they keep saying they're going to be buying it, and then I don't see as much buying as there should be buying. So, like, I think, yeah, I think taking it all step by step, and it definitely, and this is one of the reasons. The next question I was going to come to is thinking through this like treasury company question mark. The thing that I was asking myself literally this morning or the last day or two, we know that some of these treasury companies are going to go bad, right? Some of them are going to go wrong, because for various reasons, they're just, the premium that they think that's going to exist for their share price between the share price and like the number of assets they have, the more and more people who try and run this strategy, that premium is going to disappear. So they basically become a pointless company because they can't justify their valuation. So I guess the question is, when that happens, because that is going to happen. I mean, maybe part of the question is, when is that going to happen? I think we're too early to say that at the moment. But the question is, do the top companies work through that? And I actually think they do. But I'd be curious for your thoughts. Like, yeah, sure. I think other companies can try this and fail, but I don't think MicroStrategy is going to fail, for example. And, obviously it's incredibly important that they don't for the sake of all of us with how much Bitcoin they have. But I think it's one of those things where it's like the Pareto principle where the top, all of the power and success accrues to the top people. And I suspect their value is attached to their ability to keep going out to raise. As long as they can keep going out to raise to ask for more money and people give it to them, then they should be able to continue to attract the significant premium. So I think a lot of things do disappear. I wonder if it's not as disastrous for the industry as some people are thinking, because the top ones will still be fine. And I wonder, maybe even in that scenario, and this is really me playing through scenarios in my head, like you just see a bunch of like OTC kind of takeovers where, look, instead of MicroStrategy having to buy God knows how many Bitcoin off the market, they'll just buy all the shares which are trading at a discount to the number of assets that some company is running some Bitcoin strategy somewhere, and they actually get to accumulate the Bitcoin cheaper. I wonder if that would be the solution to it rather than some disaster scenario. Ledge, curious for your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think that OTC route definitely could be the case, but I also think with the amount of ETF inflows, institutional buying that we are seeing, even if there is a collapse, and BTC collapses 30% from here, for example, we are basically still at the previous all-time high. I do think that we are already smoothing out volatility. I just don't really see that scenario where one of the big treasury company would collapse, crash, have issues, and then BTC collapsing 70, 80%. These drawbacks that we used to see in previous cycles, I think a lot more than just treasury companies collapsing would need to happen simultaneously to have such an aggressive move on the way down.
Yeah, I think these top companies survive is my basic instinct. Rahim, curious for your thought there.
Yeah, I think I'm with that on it. I think as the disparity between the top treasury companies and a lot of these tiny companies increases, like you'll have exactly what you're saying. I was going to say the same thing, is you'll have like a lot of these OTC buyers, and if anything, they'll be like, oh my God, like Sailor wasn't just buying my bags, now he's being my lord and savior. He's protecting my bags from being fallen. And like I just feel like some of those companies, just like you had those 3-4 exchanges that have like a big name, whether it's Coinbase, you have Binance, whatever. Sure, the FTX thing was like a massive thing, but you have these random exchanges closing up all the time and stuff, and they get absorbed by the market very easily. So I think, yeah, as long as the like 3-4 companies at the top survive, I think this will get absorbed ways better than people realize.
Okay. I mean, obviously, this is like maybe even a little bit above our pay grades, as the numbers in the Wall Street action is kind of coalescing. So we're just showing our thoughts there. Let's see. We will see how that goes. Oxy, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, Round. What's your thought on the treasury companies accumulating either ETH or just the general situation where they seem to be accelerating?
Yeah, thanks. I guess I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are. Like, it's the only like obviously right now all of these treasury companies are trading in excess of their net asset value as it relates to the crypto balance. But is like, does the company, in order for the company to quote unquote succeed and not go under, do they need to be trading at a multiple of how like their crypto holdings? Because I guess my idea is that the reason why crypto is like performing super well isn't only because of these companies. I mean, it might have like a small impact, but like, Rahim or Legendary were saying, is like the ETF inflows, the regulation coming down the track, so on and so forth. Like, if these companies start trading more in line with their net asset value, in as well as like whatever other company like service or product that they're developing, they're still selling that on the side as well, or what have you. Like, do they need to be trading in excess of their crypto valuation? I guess is my question. Because in theory, if the price of crypto just continues to like do well, in theory, the balance sheet continues to perform well. I guess what constitutes failure? Is it the leverage aspect of it, or the multiple of their crypto holdings? I guess I don't know if I asked that question well enough, but you guys kind of get what I'm saying?
No, I get it. I think for me, what would constitute failure is if they were just forced to sell a large amount of the BTC because they can't fulfill the demands that they have, in terms of paying their debt, paying dividends, whatever it is. And if they have to do that to an extent where it's either moving the market, or it's so large that it's scaring the market, or they have to go through so many OTC deals that they're selling at a significant discount, I feel like this is what I would see. I mean, failure is a harsh word. If it's like a hiccup that happens once and there's like a liquidity strain there and you have to do it, that's okay. But if it becomes cascading and others would fail alongside, then this is when I would call this like a failure of the treasury strategies.
Yeah. I think in the end, the company still needs to run. And I think tied to what Legendary said, sure, you have to prevent a sell-off. You have to, you would essentially, like, if you're one of your core mandates or your core reasons for being is to be a treasury company, then your ability to exist is tied to your ability to raise capital. So if you can no longer trade above your premium, above your net assets, you lose the ability to raise, because people will say, well, you'll raise money, but you're not, there's no premium left. Like, what's the point in us giving you money just to buy this stuff if there's no premium? The shares won't be worth more in the future. So I think that is one of the things which a lot of people will kind of come into trouble with, I think.
One thing I also wanted to add to that, because you said, the Pareto principle and the big companies sticking around winning. And I was curious to take a look at the largest companies in the S&P 500 by market cap in 1989, and just get a view on how many of them are still around. And I was honestly surprised, because basically almost all of them are still around. And despite the fact that our world has like massively changed over the last 30 years, obviously are not the biggest companies anymore, but you still have ExxonMobil, IBM, Raytheon, Bristol Myers Squibb, Merck, Coca-Cola, Walmart, Procter & Gamble, Verizon, Johnson & Johnson, Eli Lilly, General Electric, and so on and so forth. Like, these companies are not the biggest one. That is obviously Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, all the tech giants. But they're still around, and some of them, like Eli Lilly, Walmart, are still sticking in the top 20 even 30 years later.
Yeah, it's a good point. Not everything needs to be the biggest forever and ever, necessarily. But I do think, I think the crypto stuff probably is on the upward trajectory still. So interesting. Right. We've discussed that a whole bunch. That was one of the headlines we want to talk about today. We've still got a couple more, which I think are interesting. Let's go to you first. We're going to do pump. We're going to talk pump token maybe in 5 to 10 minutes, for 5 to 10 minutes. Let's do Bitcoin kind of correcting and just your general thoughts at the moment, maybe a bit on Bitcoin dominance. And then I want to get to just crypto week, which is happening in the States at the moment. Just explain what I think, the extent to which people think this is relevant or interesting at the moment, because I think that's important. But Ledge, I want to come to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at a few data points. First off, ETF inflows yesterday, still 300 million of net inflows, obviously down from the 2 days before, which both were above $1 billion each. And in terms of liquidations, we've seen a bit of liquidations over the last 24 hours, but nothing too crazy. 150 mil in longs in BTC, which have been liquidated, and 97 mil in ETH. However, what I think is really important to point out today is that we are waiting for quite a lot of economic data to come today. On the one hand, we have inflation data, CPI coming in, what is it, 40 minutes, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, so 40 minutes from now on the one hand. And we also have earnings data coming from banks, from major banks in the States, which is JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, and that typically offers a pretty solid look at economic activity when you get a look at profitability, at at credits and loans, and the market is looking at this quite positively. When we look at the pre-market for stocks, it's actually the case that the S&P 500 is up 40 basis points, Nasdaq futures up 0.6%. Yesterday and the day before, they were down 0.3, 0.4% on the pre-markets before open. So it does seem that we're looking at some positive expectation for the data to come today. I think one thing that is important to keep in mind is that the forecast for inflation is a bit higher. That is to do with tariffs. So we do have a bit of a high expectation there. And then finally, the last thing that I wanted to take a look at, just because we haven't seen this chart in quite a while before we get into BTC dominance, is the 10-year treasury yield has settled pretty much around 4.4%. Has gone a bit above 4.5, has gone a bit under 4.3, but pretty much seems to have found this, I would not really call it a balance, but this equilibrium for the time being at 4.4%. And then the last thing I want to touch on is BTC dominance, which we've seen sliding down a tiny bit. Obviously, yesterday, BTC has dumped more than ETH has, because ETH is essentially still at 3K. So BTC dominance is down 0.45% on the day. It's down 1% on the month. But I still, if we speak about following the money, I have a hard time picturing an alt season like we've seen the last couple cycles. I do think that we can see an alt season, but I do think my gut feeling thinks it's going to be rather short, because all that buying pressure is going into BTC, is going into ETH, is going into hype. And I just think this is such a strong exogenous factor that we didn't have the last couple times around, that even when we talk amongst the three of us, like Rahim is saying, I want Pepe, because Pepe to me is a leveraged bet on ETH. Like everything is maybe still going a bit further down the risk curve, but is still looking to, oh, I'm bullish on ETH, and I just want to have a leveraged position on ETH, and I think Pepe could do it. It's not natively being bullish on Pepe because this and that. It's just it trades like leveraged ETH, and this is why I want to have this. So this is kind of my thinking on that. Even if BTC dominance is sliding down, I don't think we're going to see an alt season that looks the same way as it did in the previous cycles.
Also, in a way, because I was thinking about this as well, like everything seems to. We were talking about hyperliquid off air the other day, and I think it was I was asking you the question. I think maybe hyperliquid was at like 40 or something, and we were thinking if it goes higher or lower. And then the way I just framed the question was, well, do you think Bitcoin's going to go to 120 before it goes to, like, maybe Bitcoin was at 100, and the question was, do you think Bitcoin's going to go to 110 before it goes to 90? If it does, then hyperliquid will go to 50 before it goes lower or something. And like I'm starting to just think a lot more in terms of like, well, what is the proportional chance of like Bitcoin going to this particular number sooner rather than later, and then making some trades off the back of it? And you're right, like when Bitcoin's making such big moves, like is the thing that you're asking a question of really going to move as much as you think that it is? I think it's a reasonable question to ask. But I mean, we say this, right? But there's a bunch of these tokens that are hugely up. Pengu, Rect, a load of tokens up really, really far from their lows. So it's certainly going to be some on-chain big activity as well. Rahim, quick thought for you here on Bitcoin dominance, and then want to get to these final two topics.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle of it. I do completely agree. I don't think we'll see like alts run up like they did before. However, I do think, and just taking some of the examples that you just brought up, which is Pengu, Rect, I still feel like if you look at just the regular like Web2 world, or I hate we call it Web2 world, just the regular world, people's ability to gamble into things is going like bananas. I talk about like Pokemon all the time. The Pokemon market is going absolutely bananas. There are cards that are going 10x in like 2 weeks. Yesterday they announced that like they want to take like the Uno game to the Vegas casino. Apparently it's being adapted at casinos. Sports betting is at an all-time high. Like I just feel like what I would say is I feel like we need some sort of an indication or a catalyst that is from the retail market for us to be like, okay, you know what, so far everyone's who's been buying it's been like institutions or whatever. If suddenly we see this catalyst, okay, now I'm a bit more bullish on like these altcoins or on these like higher risk coins or memes or whatever you want to call it, because now you have like this massive appetite from people who are like so pro risk coming into our space. I still feel like a lot of this, I'm curious to see how like rate cuts happen all the way like till September. What does that lead to? Yeah, I do think like some of these old random L2, some random infra protocols that, like all of a sudden I was seeing a lot of these projects come up in the last few days that would just change it to the Pudgy PFP. And that's the first time I'm seeing these products. I've never seen them before, but I still feel like some of these like higher risk ones could be stuff like Rect and Pengu, like you mentioned, could go absolutely bizarre. A couple of them, but yeah, definitely not the entire industry.
Yeah, you mentioned interest rates there. I think that's one of the core things when you see this data coming out. If inflation does go higher, it's going to be pretty unfortunate, right? Because I think one of the calls is to lower interest rates. If you can't keep inflation under control, then it becomes harder to justify the cut that you want, which will typically be inflationary anyway. So you need inflation to be under control. So I think we're looking for those numbers today. 2 more points to get through for the show. I think we need to leave that topic there because we're running out of time. The first one, I just want to make people aware, if they're not already, some of these like important structural regulatory things happening, which I think is helpful. Then Rahim will lead the section on pump fun in a moment. Financial Times reported, it's not just because they reported it, but there's this information about Crypto Week that is taking place in the US this week. It's not necessarily an official week, but it is a week where US lawmakers are prepared to vote this week on legislation aimed at making America the world's crypto capital. So over the next week, lawmakers in the Republican-controlled House will debate a few things: the Genius Act, the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, and the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act. So that legislation spans things from companies' issuance of stablecoins to the regulation of the sector. And investors commented that the passage of the bills would help push cryptocurrencies further into the mainstream of finance. They've called this Crypto Week because they believe that this is going to be advancing landmark legislation to establish a clear regulatory framework for digital assets. So obviously, the Genius Act has already been approved. That bill enables private companies to issue stablecoins, crypto, which is pegged to the dollar, of course. The Clarity Act is, just for your information, would establish a regulatory framework for digital assets that establish clear lines between the SEC and the CFTC. And then the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act would prohibit the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency, which I think is actually quite big. It's kind of in contrast to, for example, the European plan, which I believe is to kind of push forward with a CBDC style euro at some point in time. Whereas I think America is far more, well, at least the Republican position has been far more certain that CBDCs should not come to pass. So those are a few just things that are happening on the regulatory side, which I think is important to note, because all of this becomes possible based on some of these decisions in a more friendly regulatory environment. So Ledge, just a short take here on this before we get into the pump fund stuff. Any thoughts here on the regulatory movement?
Very, very, very short take on that is, this is probably my read why this week is so volatile. We had obviously the huge run up. We have all of the economic data coming. We have exactly some of the regulatory question marks. And I feel like the market is kind of trying to place a bet on what the outcome of all those three different factors could be. But obviously, moving forward, having that data and having that clarity after all these discussions will be tremendously helpful. And at least what concerns the regulatory side, I'm not really worried about that, to be honest. I'm going to be worried in a couple of years down the line, because I feel like the pendulum has swung so far into one direction to being pro crypto, that just the equilibrium would be that when it swings back and after Trump's presidency, some of these things might become stricter again or might be taken away again. And this is maybe, and this is me thinking live, this is maybe the actual role and job of all those treasury companies. If so many companies in the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq will end up having some sort of skin in the game when it comes to crypto exposure, the more treasury companies there are that are relevant, the more difficult it might become to take back some of those regulations.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. If enough private practice kind of adopts crypto in various ways, then it's harder for another regime, which is maybe a bit less favorable to crypto, to undo some of the work. So I agree with that. Final take from me, then we get into the pump fund conversation, which is important, which is I'm getting increasingly confident that they're going to stuff a bunch of this American debt into stable coins in a way, like if you can't sell the debt in the way that you used to because the foreign demand for bonds is going down, and sure, treasuries, people can, Tether is one of the largest holders of US treasuries already. And when I've made this argument before, some people might say, well, it's fine. These stablecoin companies already hold treasuries. Like, what's the issue? Like, they already do. But I think we can go into a world where it's like mandated that if you want to operate in the States, you're going to have to hold, some proportion of your stable coin assets that is backing your stable coins might have to go into bonds or something in some way as well, in order to, whether it's bonds or it's treasuries or something, in order to be able to just help them out on the debt side. I think that's something to keep an eye on. That's certainly what I am. But look, we're running out of time. In fact, we're already over time, but we have to touch on Pump Fund because that is the big token that came out yesterday. It's trading just under $6 billion. Rahim, what do we need to know? What are the big takeaways for you from seeing this huge token go live?
Perfect. So I know you guys covered like some of the pre-raise aspect of it, so maybe we'll skip that for today. But just to put like some bits into context, so the pre-launch price action for the pump token, where it opened around 5.6, dipped for a few minutes around 3.8, hovered around 5.2 to 5.1. That was like the pre-launch price. We saw pretty much similar price action when the pump token came live last night, last evening at 6 p.m. my time, which was it opened at 6.1 bill, hovered around 5.8, 5.2, and dipped to 5.1, and has been like seeing pretty decent recovery. What's interesting to note is there was about an initially about 55% of like the trading volume was actually coming from exchanges, which kind of makes sense because a lot of people did buy it through the exchange ecosystem. However, in the last 24 hours, the spot volume, and this is on like Hyperliquid through unit, for spot buys is around 125 mil for pump, which is higher than what it is at the highest exchange, which is Bybit. I think it's interesting to see in general, like the whole this tokenization layer aspect really becoming bullish. I do think the pre-markets on Hyperliquid kind of tampered the price pump right after TGE. However, I still think this has to be regarded as like a very good, successful TGE, considering you have the people who entered the ICO. They're still upward. It's trading at 5.4. They're still up a good 35-40%. I put out this tweet today. I think this is way bigger of a deal than people realize, because they did not do an airdrop. All of their pre-sellers are in profit. Early investors, VCs, probably love an ecosystem like this, because every TG, I think if you look at every single TG that came out this cycle, you have it open at some price, and it's like straight wick down in the next couple of hours for like 80 to 90%. We did not see this with like pump fun, and I'm like so sure that this is going to change in some ways, or at least drive a conversation about like, okay, we need to maybe start changing the culture of giving people airdrops, and maybe turn this point system into an allocation for pre-sale that let community do the pre-sale instead of getting VCs and stuff, and kind of roll out an ecosystem like this. So I think that was completely noteworthy. I think I'm excited to see what happens the next couple of days. If I'm just like traditionally looking at it from like typical market makers point of view, yesterday DWF Labs posted that they have about, I forgot the amount, like millions of dollars worth of pump token that they are selling on OTC. Like, I'm sure like a lot of these market makers haven't like stepped in the way they would. They're waiting for a lot of these people to exit. I did see there was a statistic about 60% people sold their allocation. However, that's kind of hard to track, because what you're tracking is movement from the wallet.
Sure.
So you don't know. Some people must have just moved it. But I think it's kind of interesting to see how all of this is panning out.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of interesting points there, and thanks for the summary in general. This point about, I think there could be a shift. I think you're right. Just an airdrop just for existing, maybe that's not going to be the way forward. Like, if you do want to support the team that you claim to like so much, and you want a stake in their future by having their token, sure. Now that the regulations permit it, participate in the ICO. Like, if it's open for you, they'll open it up, and if you want to get a token, then buy at a favorable price, rather than just doing stuff and thinking that you're going to be made rich for using a product, which is a uniquely crypto focused thing that exists. Like, nowhere in the real world do you use a product and expect to be dropped 5 to 6 figures for doing something that you want. And this is me speaking as someone who's done very well of airdrops, thinking the reason I do this is because there's just this crazy arbitrage, right? Like, it's not normal. Like, I'm not acting entitled. It's just, if for whatever reason our industry's been designed that way, so you take advantage of it when you can. But that is not normal. Let's, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, it has rewired my brain though. Like, I get a message, oh, you have been using Amazon Prime for 12 years. You were one of the first customers in your country. I see the same with Netflix. I signed up the second it was possible to do in my country. I'm like, why don't I get a reward for this? Like, I'm an early user. I've been using that for years. Where's my airdrop? I should be paid for this. Like, it actually rewires your brain to have been in crypto and have been enjoying airdrops so much.
I think so. I think that's partly true. And then the second key takeaway, I think, which is important, maybe just to close here, the Hyperliquid side is impossible to ignore, right? The spot volume via unit was humongous, as Rahim just kind of pointed out some of those numbers. What's the takeaway here, Ledge? Like, Rahim gave his thoughts already. What are you thinking when it comes to the pre-market price discovery? It all took place on Hyperliquid. Like, there's almost no need to speculate, because it just came out at the Hyperliquid price and then went down. So there was the sell-off then. but it kind of operated like a prediction market. It was fairly accurate because it had done so much volume, and that's broke with a lot of the pre-markets beforehand, right? Where they're completely unreliable because there's no volume backing it. So I don't know. What is your thought here? And then we'll close.
It's a beautiful business for Hyperliquid. Those were hundreds of millions of dollars in volume. That is just a fee earning machine to be speculating on that. B, it can be it's an additional challenge for the teams, because we speak about like investing with imagination, and maybe Pump has, in their mind wanted to have this thing open at $8 billion and send it to 10 or whatever. It just makes this very, very hard if you have hundreds of millions of dollars saying nope, you're valued somewhere between 5 and 6 billion, and this is where we've been trading most of the time. So it makes it harder for teams to basically have their like fantasies fulfilled when it comes to opening price action. And then I kind of feel it makes movements on the chart after the TGE more obvious. So a lot of people on the timeline have been saying Pump will go above $6 billion. ICO Beast has been saying it will go above $6 billion. I'd be highly surprised if some crime isn't applied to the chart over the next 36 hours. And it becomes more evident, because if you market make your chart from the TG all the way up to whatever you want it to be, it might look a bit more natural, but it certainly doesn't look natural if the pre-market has been saying, nope, this is 5 bill, and then suddenly we move from here to 10 bill. So everything that is more chart, creative chart painting becomes more obvious to the public eye.
Yeah, that's a very, very big takeaway for me. It's like you can't really expect a token to come out at a significantly different value from the hyperliquid pre-market. Basically, it's the oracle. That's where the truth is. When you do that much volume, that's the truth. It's like a prediction market. I don't know. I want to think on that more. That's just like my first raw reading of something that just happened yesterday. Rahim, give us your final take and then we close.
Yeah, I think it's almost like you're voting with your wallets at some point, right? I think Ledge put it like beautifully, that you have millions of dollars, people being like, okay, no, it can be worth more, which just begs the question, like, I don't even know what the mechanics are. What does the process of like pre-listing a token really means? Would this be like a normal thing now for like all the future tokens come up? And that kind of changes things for builders, like, when you have your token launch. Yeah, and I just feel like it's so interesting. I don't even know what the process is. I would be very curious to learn, and if someone is listening knows, please tag me. I would love to learn, because can Hyperliquid list a lot of these? Because this kind of changes the game. Going back to what Ledge's point is, like, now it all comes down to, you can't have crime season just like that. If there are hundreds of millions of wallets saying this price can go above this, boom, they get to call the shots. The money gets to call the shots.
I think this is what happens. Like, in the end, Unit becomes the kingmaker of tokens, in the sense where if you are big enough, they'll list you and you'll have a pre-market. If you're not big enough, then you won't get listed. And so the thing I'll be watching for first, and I've seen no news about it, although I think that it's a pretty big sale, which is going to sell out because of the attractive pricing, is Plasma. The Plasma, obviously we had that deposits where they attracted $1 billion in deposits, but now the pre-sales actually, I don't know if you'd call it a pre-sale. It is. It's the sale is actually taking place on Thursday, I believe. So I'm not sure. I think it's actually a whole month until I need to read the documents again. I think it's actually quite a lot of time before the token will actually trade after the deposits. There's like a lockup period. So that'll be one to look at, I think, maybe as a candidate for this, potentially. But we'll see. In the interim, we'll see what else qualifies, and we'll see if it behaves the same way. Definitely interesting to see the pre-markets operate in the way that we've just described. Big step change for the way tokens will get launched if Hyperliquid is going to take all of that pre-market action in the way that it did. And so definitely something to incorporate into your thinking moving forward. Guys, that was a great show. Ran it over as usual.
One really quick thought on Plasma, because we said this airdrop game is changing. You need to earn your pre-sale spot by participating. And the thing that I found interesting that Plasma is going to do 2 days from now, so now all of those deposits are locked. Basically, you had to deposit money into Plasma, and the amount of those deposits determined how much you will be able to put in on that token pre-sale. But, and they said it explicitly, you can't use your locked balances. So if you put in 100K and that gives you a 5K pre-sale ticket, you can't just take 5K out of the 100, which you already have deposited. You need to put up extra money for that, which it's a small amount, but I think psychologically it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That is fair. So good stuff. We'll keep an eye on that one. Guys, it's been a great show. Ran over because it was a good conversation. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X Video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcasts if you prefer to catch up that way. Thanks to Legendary and Rahim for co-hosting with me. Thank you guys so much for joining in the YouTube comments and the Twitter comments, filling in all of the gaps of knowledge we had basically instantly. Shout out to you guys for that. It's great to have a working, smart group of people to fill in those gaps. It's the benefit of going live. Have a wonderful day, guys. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place. We will catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.